Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche Podcast. We got Eric, we got Megan, we got Rudo. We got an Avs game tonight, though it's not going to be televised. You can get it on Minnesota radio. I think that's the only place you'll be able to get it. So, yeah, take that with a grain of salt and take the roster the Avs have sent to Minnesota with a grain of salt. The surefire NHLers on the Avs roster start and end with Jack Johnson. Maybe depending on how you feel about Curtis McDermott. That's about it for roster locks. I do think this is interesting, though, because there are a handful of guys that are either fighting for a spot on the roster or fighting to not be in the next round of cuts in this lineup. You look at a Jason Poland, you look at a Riley Tufte, you look at a Ben Myers, even a Sam Malinsky. Who is this game the most important for in Colorado's lineup?
I mean, I'll go first. Like guys like Tufte, guys like Poland, guys like Steinberg playing or no?
He is.
Yeah, okay. They're all in the same boat in my book. Who's ahead, who's below? It doesn't matter. They're all there. I always say it. It's a piece of ice. And it's two skates, your gloves, your stick. It's an opportunity to show the coaching staff what you're made of. It's an opportunity for the coaches to see what you can do, even though it is a preseason game, even though it is, not NHL lineups, so to speak, right? So right there, you're auditioning to maybe not necessarily next week when the opening roster is, but maybe for in 2 months from now when there's a couple injuries. And then they're like, okay, I really like what he does because you know what? Even though he's a winger, he can win faceoffs on the right side as a PK guy. So you're putting opportunities in a game like that you show what you can do. So I think it goes a long ways, and I think that's why you do play the preseason game. But I do believe this is the last preseason game where guys are getting, I call them those cookies. You know what I mean? Like you get a cookie to show what you can do, and then they'll get down to the more normal roster, right? Starting probably Sunday, and then get down to business and, really get some combinations going. And so that's what it's for. It's very important for some guys to show what they can do. And I mean, some guys have done it and some guys have not done so much so far. And then it's another opportunity for them to show what they can do.
It's an interesting separation for some of these players too, because there's a few that are really in serious NHL roster spot contention.
Sure.
And that is boiled down to Ben Myers, Kiviranta, Olofsson, in my opinion, on the forward side. But, PTO, Peter Holland is still kicking around in that bunch as well. Tufte also is coming up the ranks too. I don't know how seriously that looks if Olofsson and Kiviranta are ahead of him, but obviously we've talked about Jared Bednar admitting there was a hole in the middle and them trying Tufte there. There's then a lot of pressure on Ben Myers specifically, who is a returning Avs player who has played under Bednar, has a lot to lose if things don't go well tonight. And then similarly on the D side of things, Sam Malinsky, who didn't have the best first showing in a preseason game, has a lot to lose because he is someone that they can send up and down without worrying about waivers throughout the course of the season. So there's less pressure to have him start on an NHL roster, and they could be comfortable having him start the year in Loveland. And so it's important for him to make a really big impression tonight, especially because he'll have a lot of opportunity in this lineup to be a player that they lean on quite heavily. I think he's going to be used in all situations so they can see what he's made of. And it's interesting, too. There's a lot of Minnesota guys on this lineup, so they're probably going to have friends and family in the building as well. That just adds another layer of something to play for that we won't be able to see, but I think it will be nice. There's a lot of motive for guys to make tonight really count.
Yeah, and I think it is interesting when you talk about preseason like this, because you hit a point where the first couple games, there are guys going hard, but certainly the NHL guys they're using these games to get up to speed. This is game 3. You kind of mentioned, yeah, I would expect the guys battling for something to be going pretty hard. But then you take a look at a Jack Johnson, a Curtis McDermott, who, roster battle or not, they're a known quantity. Is it time for those guys to start going 100%, or is it still a little bit too early for that?
I think Jack Johnson is going 100%.
With those dangles.
The little shoulder shimmy. But, for someone like Brad Hunt, who is penciled in as a potential 7th, 8th man, but isn't solidly in that spot and has guys like Keaton Middleton coming up behind him vying for that, it's important for Brad Hunt to go 100%. And to be fair to Brad Hunt, I don't doubt that he won't either. He is a leader on and off the ice, and whether he's going to be a leader among the Eagles group or with the Avs group moving forward, that's just who he is. So I don't doubt that he's someone going 100% as well. But yeah, you look at these lists of names, and there isn't a single person on here who shouldn't be going 100% at this point.
All right. Now I'm sad we can't watch. Eric,
Yes.
You've been through many preseasons. We're pretty strong believers that 6 preseason games is too many. How does it feel from the players' side when you have this really long run up to the season?
I agree with you. And it used to be more. I mean, it used
No
to be
thanks.
like, I don't even know what Montreal, for example, does this year, but I know they used to be at 10-11.
Oh, God.
That is like way too much. I think the magic number is 3 for me. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like if you get into 3 and you had a good summer of, obviously getting your body and I'm talking about workout wise and, get ready for the grueling season. I think you need about 3 games to get your brain going back to normal stuff and playing against opponents, not your own teammates. And, which is there's a big difference going in the corner of practice with I don't care if it's Cogliano that's going hard. It's still not the same thing until you go against a real opponent that's got a different jersey, and it makes a big difference. I think 3 is good, but it is good. I don't think you'll ever get to that. But guys like back then, guys like Joe, whatever, they'd be like, just give me 1 game and I'm fine. And I do believe for a guy like Makar, it's probably like 1 game and he's good to go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or even Nate or those guys are so elite.
Based on Miko, it's 0 games.
Well,
he shows up opening night.
But those guys are such elite, world-class talents. I'm talking about for the other pigeons like myself. Like you probably need 3 games to get your bearings back and your head back into it and your thinking and all that kind of stuff. So I would say 3 is the name. I mean the number.
I'm here for 3. Megan, you were at the Avs skating in Colorado today. Anything interesting, or is this a whole bunch of dudes waiting around to see what happens after the game tonight for cuts?
That depends on your definition of interesting. I think a lot of people look at this lineup and they see an AHL lineup and lose a little bit of interest. One interesting thing is who they're going to be playing opposite of is bona fide NHL players.
They're getting some of the big names from Minnesota.
That's going to make this a really big test. And as far as interesting, then they really just did special teams. So
Okay.
I can only preview a little bit of what that looked like. And then they did some line rushes yesterday, but it was a mixed group because they had guys that are going on this trip split from it. So a little was going pretty well for him, and his handling has been maybe a point of criticism before. So I'll be curious to see what he does with that opportunity then tonight. If that is a skill that he can have at the NHL level, that's going to make Tufty's opportunity for a job a lot more compelling.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And he was extremely frustrated when he got worked off the puck by Peter Holland at one point. And I don't like to bring that up for a negative reason. It's more so that this is someone that I think we should keep an eye on, exactly because he is so engaged. And then just all the others that we're talking about, Ben Myers is on that second power play unit. And he was taking a variety of looks, honestly. He was in the bumper spot, but obviously moving around quite a bit. So a lot of opportunity for him too, because there's a few names in here that are competing for the same roster spot as him. And I think that's the big storyline to keep an eye on for tonight that we won't, again, be able to actually see.
Keep an ear on it.
Keep an ear on it.
Look, think as much as anything, they might be looking for guys to stay out of the box. You mentioned Walensky had 8 penalty minutes in his other game. He's going to have to take shifts against Kirill Kaprizov tonight. That guy could torch a few kids. Leave it that way.
And that's why it's awesome. And that's why,
And that's why it's awesome.
No, but that's why it's awesome, because you need to know what
This is
you're
what
up
the peak
against.
looks
That's
like.
You
Yeah.
need to know what this league
Defend
is.
Kaprizov.
Yes, and that should be a challenge if you're a young kid. And when I say young, like you've never played on the same ice as a guy like Kaprizov. So you want to test yourself. You want to see what you look like against these guys, because you can say all you want that, I can play in this league, but you have to go and show it. And this is an opportunity tonight. We're making fun of the game because you know what I mean? We're poking fun at it because it's not a real NHL game. But for some guys, it's a real NHL test.
That's true.
And that's what you're seeing tonight. And that's why Bednar, Pratt, the coaching staff is there, and they're behind the bench. And you're treating this as a real NHL game. And you have to. And you have to see when the soup gets hot, like who stays in it. You know what I mean? And I think some guys will feel tonight after the game, if you have a few shifts against Kaprizov, like, oof, okay, I got some ways to go. You know what I mean? And it's important to know where you're at in your development. And that's important for the management to see where they're at with their development. And it's important for the coaches to see where they're at. So I think that's why you play preseason games. We just talked about it. It would be nice if it was less. But, it's different purpose than some guys, like you said, Mikko, or like Megan said, Brad Hunt. He's going to go 100%. We know that, but everybody's kind of got different perspectives on those games.
Last thing I wanted to talk about with the roster here, and we can move into the rest of our conversation for today. Annunen and Holm. I know Bednar has gone on the record saying Annunen's the number 2 with Francouz out. How much opportunity is there for Holm to compete with Annunen in this preseason and going forward through the AHL year?
Right now, it's opportunity, but it doesn't seem to really be competitive with Annunen's, just because they're giving Annunen a lot of runway here in preseason.
For sure.
Giving him the closer look. That's not to say, though, that this isn't important for Holm, because they're one injury away from this being a call-up to Holm.
Yep.
And in knowing that, then they are looking at him closely as well. And I think there's some element of him getting acclimated to playing with a Colorado team in front of him, generally speaking, whereas Annunen has had a little bit of time to adjust to that. And so I think there's opportunity for Holm in time, and he's going to get plenty of it in Loveland, especially if Annunen is number 2 for Avs to start. Then he's going to get a huge look in Loveland. But as far as taking Annunen's 2 spot right now, it just doesn't seem realistic with how much of a look they've given Annunen, and fairly so. Like, he has been with the organization, with their development staff for longer. Yeah. They've invested those resources in him. They have a little bit more familiarity with what Annunen is.
I think it's not just playing for the Avalanche, but it's playing for Parkila too, who has a pretty unique style when it comes to coaching goaltenders. There are a few things that he really specifically wants his goaltenders to do that he regularly works on with guys. And Holm's been with him for 2 weeks now, so.
Totally agree. And right there, UC Parkila has done a good job, and Annunen's been working with him, Peter Budaj, guys like that. So there's a familiarity. And when you have that, you feel more confident. I always say that about Bednar with JT Compher. It's just, there's a trust factor. There's a familiar face. It's just normal. That doesn't mean that Holm's not a good goaltender. Right. I do believe he is a good goaltender. Again, he's never played one game in the NHL. And I'm not saying that Eustace is.
He's got a couple.
He's got a couple. So there's a difference. But for them, it's a known commodity. They know what he's like. They know what he's like under pressure. They've seen him at the American League level. They've seen him in practice at the NHL level. They've seen it interact with teammates. His partner in net. There's a big difference. So he does have a big lengthy advance against Holm. Now it comes down to, do they feel he's capable of being a number 2? And I know we'll talk about waivers and everything. Maybe we'll get to that after. But but I do believe that I have confidence in him, and I do believe that that's where he makes his step, is gets that opportunity, and I think he passes the test and he runs with it.
Okay. And then Believers on the show today. On that note, we are brought to you by Illegal Pete's. You can get down to one of 11 locations here in Colorado to get delicious burritos. They have happy hour from 3 to 8 p.m. You can go enjoy the patio as we finally have had a couple of weeks of nice weather, not too rainy, not too hot. It's beautiful out there on Illegal Pete's patio. Some of the best queso around. You cannot do any better there. Go check out their fresh ingredients. Get yourself a fantastic burrito down at Illegal Pete's. One just a couple blocks from the bar. Great place to pregame if you're coming down to the bar for, if it's Avs or Nuggets game, maybe happiness. If it's a Broncos game, maybe a little bit of sadness. I don't know. The Pete's can help fill the void a little bit of the depression. Go get yourself some Illegal Pete's and then hit up DraftKings Sportsbook. When you go over to DraftKings Sportsbook and use code DNVR to sign up for a new account, you can get $200 in free bonus bets when you jump on the train. DraftKings has a ton of different betting options for you, a ton of different bonuses. All customers get 2 new offers every game day for the rest of September. You can still get in on that. There's still some time left in September, so jump on that with your $200 in bonus bets when you bet $5 on any NFL action. Jump on it with that DNVR code. You must use the DNVR code to get your $200 in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, you can call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. Licensee partner Golden Nugget, Lake Charles, LA. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms for eligibility, terms and responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. And I also have a pick of the week for you. It's not really my pick of the week. It's Megan and AJ's pick of the week. They both took Buffalo, to make the playoffs.
Yes.
So if you want a pretty decent bet, I mean, look, half the league makes the playoffs in the NHL, and you can get Buffalo at even money to make the playoffs.
It's a good bet.
It's a pretty good deal. Just throwing it out there. If you're looking for a futures bet at the NHL, that might be the one to take. So,
but I liked your read there, though, because I had to do it the other day, and I have a lot of respect for you right now.
Trust, the disclaimer used to not be that long. Trust me, it used to be easier. But now we got the long disclaimer, so we made it through. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. Anything else we want to add to the game, or are we ready to have the waiver conversation?
It's loosely related to the goalie conversation and the waiver conversation.
That's
and
where
it was
we're
just
going.
a call out to the front office in choosing Arvid Holm over this offseason. It stood out as a different look because prior to that, it had been a Keith Kincaid, Jonas Johansson type that was alongside Eustace and Loveland. More veteran-y. And exactly the word I was going to use.
Put the sauce on him. All right.
And Arvid Holm is a little bit of a younger and unproven, but promising goaltender. And I think his waiver exemption status in knowing that Pavel Francouz might not be ready to start the season was a very calculated move. One, the upside of a promising young goaltender is fun. And two, they can also move Holm up and down throughout the season if they needed to, which is obviously not the ideal, but it was just a smart move from the front office to seek out that type of goaltender.
So let me ask you the hard question then. If a goaltender that is backup capable comes available on the waiver wire, do you pull that trigger if you're Colorado, or are you riding Annunen?
No, you pull that trigger.
Okay.
Still.
All
They're
right.
very smart and forward thinking, and I think this is all a part of the plan. It's not a demerit of Eustace. I think he would be 1 year too soon than what they would like for him personally.
Eric?
I don't disagree. It's just you need, and I agree with Megan. It's just that it's a crystal ball right now because you don't really know. And I know you can look at rosters, and don't kid yourself. The Avs management have looked at the rosters, and and you have all the rosters in front of you, and then you're looking at it, and then you're saying, okay, Team X, they're gonna put Frankie, or not Frankie. It's the wrong name because we're all used to Frankie, but player X, you know what I mean? Like through, and then does that make us a better team if you're the Avs? And then you're looking at it, but then all that goes in the garbage if tonight in whatever, Detroit, there's a game played, and then all of a sudden there's an injury. So you can't plan on that. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying we're saying to plan on this. What I'm saying is I'm more than comfortable if I'm the Avalanche that if there is no options, I'm comfortable starting with obviously Georgiev and then Annunen. I do believe he can make that step. But if, like I said, they will look at it, and waivers are tricky. I mean, waivers are tricky, and I know I'm not saying people are ignorant to it. I know you guys know the rules, but maybe somebody out there listening doesn't know the rule, and that doesn't make him ignorant. I'm saying, but there are a pecking order. There are.
We'll talk about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what I'm trying to say. So sometimes it's like you how come they didn't pick him up? It's not that easy. But you got to remember, you pick someone up, you have to put them on your roster, right? But I'm comfortable if it's Annunen and Holm, and and even if I do believe Georgiev's going to play more games this year. I do believe he's capable of playing more games, and I know he wants to play more games. And even if you go 4 or 5 games that you don't play, in that situation, it's easy to just say, Eustace, go down there in Loveland, play for a weekend. Holm comes and sits on the bench, and then whoops, Annunen comes back. So it doesn't feel like you haven't played, which as a goalie, you can go weeks without playing. It's tough. You can get as many shots as you want in practice. It's not the same thing as game situation. So, yeah, I mean, I do believe they're going to look at it. I do believe that if there's something that makes them, again, this cap, there's
a lot of factors. There's a lot of factors.
It all has to work. And then, but if not, I do believe they're comfortable going with Annunen and Holm, for example, as 2 and 3. So whatever the time is. Again, we still don't know Frankie's situation, right? Which is, it's all fair in games. I mean, we're all good, but we just know he's not there at the start.
And here's the kind of 2 competing factors with that. If Frankie is out for a couple of weeks, a month, the early part of the season, October, there is not a ton of games. They have a good amount of off time. So you can have Georgiev play most of those games. You don't necessarily need a ton out of your backup at that point. If the injury is longer, then you start having a harder conversation on that. But the other side of this is, look at the Alex Newhook deal the Avs made over the offseason. They're not in a position where they want to wait around and see if these guys can be good enough in those positions. They want to win right now and give themselves the best opportunity to do that. And if that is their backup goalie playing a handful of games or more before Francouz is back, it's hard not to look at that waiver wire, I think. So, we'll see ultimately what ends up happening. We'll see which goalies exactly end up being available, and we'll see how desperate other teams are to claim some of these guys.
It is really interesting for a couple of reasons. One, because of the unique position of goaltender being one that you don't want to harm a young player's confidence by putting them in a role that they might not quite be ready for prematurely. Like, that would be of the detriment to Eustace's development if they did that and rode on him too heavily in that space. And like Eric was saying, if he's just sitting on a bench for games, backing up
You're not helping him at all.
That's also not helping his development. So that's why I think what we see happen with the waiver wire will give us a better insight into what's going on with Pavel Francouz and his projected status, because Tampa Bay and the news of Vasilevsky and
they're looking for somebody now.
This exactly, like, it could be a competitive waiver wire goaltending market right now too, in seeing that. And so the Avs, I think, are going to make the decision that is not out of desperation. And I think that they are also going to make the decision based on their belief of Pavel Francouz. And I think that's just going to be something interesting to watch, and why Spencer Martin might not be claimed by the Avs tomorrow.
Yeah, they also know who Spencer Martin is, so
they're familiar with Spencer Martin also.
But I do want to jump on that, as Eric kind of started mentioning. The Avs are in the bottom third of teams on the waiver wire list coming into this season. There are a lot of teams ahead of them that can make that claim and get a player before the Avs can. So my question is this, and we'll apply this to some guys we're going to talk about in a little bit too, but we can start with the goaltending. If Francouz is out for a significant amount of time, if you're looking at that waiver wire, would the Avs consider throwing a 5th-round pick, throwing a deep end of their prospect pool prospect at someone to get that goalie without having to deal with the waivers?
I think so. I mean, I think so. I'll jump on right now. Like, And what I was saying earlier about Annunen is you touched upon it. Georgiev, you touched upon it. You got to look at the schedule.
Yep.
There's months in a season that are way easier, and there's months that are way tougher. I can tell you that it's not an exact number. It's when you play and which games you play.
Sure.
And that makes a big difference. A guy like Georgiev would probably want to play 70. And I'm just being honest. I'm not telling you that's the right number.
The modern NHL, nobody plays
I
70.
get that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying Prey wants to play more. But if you look at the schedule, and we don't know when Frankie's coming back. We don't know if he is coming. We're just speculating. But if you look at the start of their season, he can go on a pace of 75 games. I'm not telling you he's going to play 75 games. We can get the majority of the games and then figure out where they're at with Frankie. Now, as far as, you're right, Tampa now, you have Vasilevsky. I do believe, I don't have the list right now of the waivers, like who's ahead of them.
Sure.
I would assume that Tampa's ahead of them.
Tampa is ahead.
It is ahead of them. So, yeah,
It's like
can all say you
Vegas.
want, like, how come they didn't claim him? Tampa snatched him. No, Tampa's ahead of them in the pecking order.
But
That's just one example. If there's a valued commodity that they like.
the only teams that are behind are the final four, and then it's like a couple of teams out east. And
But you got to
that's
remember, when
it.
you take someone, just for people to understand, you take someone, then you go back to the bottom of the list.
Right, yeah.
It's not just the standings. It's you took someone, and I don't even know when the last time the Avs took someone, but you go back to the bottom of the pecking order.
Yep.
So there is an order, there is a thing, and people sometimes say, oh, that team, slept on the switch. No, they didn't. You don't even know that they put a claim on because it's not out there that you put a claim in, and you just didn't get rewarded because there was a team that was ahead of you. But I do believe the Avs look, and you have time to study and see what you need to do. And yeah, I mean, I'm not that ignorant to it in the sense that you have the team to win the Stanley Cup, and then you're saying, okay, you know what I mean? Here we are in January, and Frankie's not there for whatever reason. Are we comfortable going with Annunen and Holm? Probably not. So I do believe they're going to pull the trigger and go get somebody that's got more experience, and as they should, as I would do, as you would do, and I think you would do too. So
I don't know that I would, to be honest with you.
no, I don't know.
For waivers,
I mean,
sure. Giving up assets, I don't know that.
well,
I'd
I
commit
mean,
to
at
that.
some point you got to protect yourself too. You know what I mean? What if something happens? And it's like, yeah, and you never know. I mean,
the thing
Vegas
is-
Golden Knights won with Hayden Hill.
The
So
thing is-
and I'm not bashing Hayden Hill. I'm saying, but that's
I've also watched the Avs year on year give up an asset for a goalie that plays 2 games for them, and that's it.
Yeah.
So I struggle with that a little bit, but
Is there some trust too in how they've filled the goaltending position that this is something they will review very smartly? The gamble they took on Georgiev, Kemper before that, and Grubauer. I don't know why I almost called him Jagir. That is not his name.
they both start with G.
They both start with G. Yeah. Before that, now that's obviously at the starting position. And it's very different from a waiver wire pickup or a trade that requires giving up assets, which I don't know. Those are two interesting parts of the conversation because I know that would be the ideal for the team opposite Colorado, and they have a little bit more say then in who they're seeking out more specifically there rather than the gamble of waivers. But I do think it's something that they won't sit on if the prognosis for Pavel Francouz isn't looking great.
Be aggressive, as they say. On that note, we are brought to you by the fantastic folks over at the ad read that I totally have prepared and know what it is. It's Shady Rays. Of course it is. Should have worn my sunglasses so I could see the read. Go to shadyrays.com. Use code DNVR when you purchase. If you get 2 pairs of sunglasses or more, you get 50% off your entire order. They have a fantastic product. It's been given 5 stars by over 250,000 people. They really are great sunglasses, and they're for an affordable price. You don't have to pay like Oakley level prices for good sunglasses. You go to Shady Rays. They also have other products too, like goggles for skiers and snowboarders as we start to inch closer towards mountain season. I don't know. Do snowboarders wear goggles? I don't know. I was a skier. I was lame, so
I don't know.
I mean, I'm sure they wear some. But like, do they wear sunglasses or goggles? Are they too cool for goggles? I don't know.
That's a good question.
Anyway, get your Shady. Hey, look at the goggles right there.
Well,
Get your Shady Rays today. ShadyRays.com. If you're local, they do have a brick and mortar in the Park Meadows Mall. Also brought to you by the folks over at Bacchus and Schenker. If you get injured like Pavel Francouz and you're not sure about the diagnosis and it wasn't your fault, make sure you hit up Bacchus and Schenker at 222-2222 today, or coloradolaw.net. Either way, they'll give you a free consultation. You can go over there. They will hear your case. If you've been injured in any way, basically, a car accident, if it was at work, if you're riding a scooter downtown, if a random hobo tried to attack you, who knows? Any sort of situation where you have been injured and you're not at fault, they've got your back. If they think you have a case, they will take your case on for completely nothing up front. They only get paid when you win. So make sure you get over with Bacchus and Schenker. They're very good at this. They've won over $1 billion for their clients over the 25 years they've been doing it. So they will win you the money that you deserve. Go check them out, coloradolaw.net or the 2 number. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. Look, the name that has been swirling about Twitter for the waiver wire has been Connor Timmins coming from Toronto. He's having a very good preseason. Toronto does have a few too many defensemen. 1, should the Avs be in on Timmins? Could he be a number 6? Could he push a Jack Johnson to a number 7 role? 2, if the Avs are in on Timmins, do you think they could actually get him off the waiver wire, or will he get claimed before he gets to Colorado?
Well, that one first, Meg, or you want me to go?
You go first.
All right, that's fine. Here's my take on it. What's he at again? Was he a 1-1?
Yeah, it's very small contract, which they would have to make room for.
But that's exactly. It's not, it's not a two-way guy that, a Keaton Middleton or, you know what I mean? Like that is easier to, what's my take on it? Toronto, obviously he had a little bit of success last year in Toronto, right? I mean,
hey, he's been a good hockey player when he's healthy. Like
you have new management in Toronto.
Yep.
We don't know. I don't know what people are speculating that he's gonna. Again, every team does that. They have all the rosters. Everyone speculates. Oh God, I mean, he's gonna get. He's gonna be the guy that gets through. It's easier to push. If I'm Toronto, and that's my. If I'm Toronto, and my thought process is that we're sending Connor Timmins down, I do it now. I don't wait longer, because the longer you wait,
don't give anybody
the more
another
people
look.
Get injured. And again, we talked about that earlier. You claim a guy on waivers, you have to keep him on your roster, because if you throw him back down, then obviously that team that lost him on waivers can just take him, put it down on waivers. I mean, in the minors without clearing anything. And that's why sometimes you see nowadays, like, it has to fit your cap. So those contender teams like the Avalanche, it could be just a couple $100,000, but there is a difference. There is a difference. I'm not saying it's a major difference, but you have to talk about it, and you have to know that, it's not as easy as it sounds.
Well, and this is the conversation that the Avs have to have if they are interested in claiming Timmins. Would you rather have Timmins on your NHL roster, or would you rather have a Frederick Olofsson, Ben Myers, Curtis McDermott? One of those scratches that you were planning on carrying in your lineup would now have to go to the minors.
When they moved on from Connor Timmins, Trevor Timmins, scout. When they moved on from him, there was a reason they moved on from him. And right, there was the injuries and all that kind of stuff, and needing a fresh start somewhere else. And I think the Avs have been awesome about that, and giving guys a chance to go get a different lease on their career, right? Which is awesome. No, not every team does that. I'm not pumping the Avs tires, but it is true. I think C-Mac and company have been awesome about those things. So, and you got to remember the kid came from far, with those injuries, and now he goes to Phoenix. It didn't, okay, but then he has a little bit of success last year in Toronto, last 40 games. New management comes in. It's the end for a few guys. It's just the way it is. New coach, new GM.
Look, Dubas is out, so all the Greyhounds got to go. That's how it works.
You know what I mean? So now, exactly. You know how it is. And then you go back, and what were the Avs thinking about him? It wasn't that long ago. What is that, 2 years ago that he was here, right? Yeah. So it's maybe they I hate the word like or not like, but maybe they felt that he wasn't a fit for them. You know what I mean? And that's why they moved on from him. So that's not going to change their opinion 2 years later. But you're right. Now you have to look on a board and say, okay, if we do claim this, which I do believe he's a good, serviceable NHLer, I do believe he would get claimed by another team before the Avs. That's just me,
Yeah, I do too.
And I think that again, we talked about that earlier today, about guys teams make decisions. So he got 2 goals, 2 assists last night. I don't care that he still got 2 goals, 2 assists.
Yep.
And it's a preseason NHL game. Yes, it's not an NHL game, but now every game that you are at, there's about 20, 25 teams looking at you. And maybe you're not fighting for a roster spot on your team, but you're fighting for a roster spot on someone's team in the NHL. I used to have a coach, Mark Crawford, former Avalanche coach, in the minors, reminded us every day at the American League level, you might not have room for you in Toronto, but there's other teams looking at you. And you have to have that mentality. So what Connor Timmins is doing right now is he's showing that, okay, you know what I mean? So I'm showing everybody that I can be serviceable. So I do believe, because there's still an upside to his game, and he plays a smart game, I do believe somebody picks him up before the Avs do. So we'll never know the answer in my book.
Yeah, I don't think he makes his way to the Avs, but I do think they would have interest in him because I think he was a means to an end in getting Darcy Kemper. They needed a goaltender to bring them to the Stanley Cup, and they found that in Darcy Kemper. Whether you feel one type of way about his overall performance, he was a strong goaltender in the regular season and helped carry them to the finish line despite injuries. And that is actually a pretty high honor for Connor Timmins to be the piece that they moved to bring about Darcy Kemper. And so I don't doubt that the organization probably still views him in a positive light to some extent. But what's interesting is Arizona recognized that Connor Timmins was not going to pass through waivers. And so they orchestrate a trade to at least get something in return. Toronto has to be also aware of this fact then if Arizona was aware of this fact.
Exactly where I'm heading. Yep.
And so Toronto, one, has some decisions to make because you know who also had a really great preseason last year? Dennis Malgin. And he eventually, after a waiver claim in Dryden Hunt, became a return
and then a trade.
because you know who was watching Dennis Malgin's terrific preseason? Colorado.
Yep.
And so this is where Connor Timmins is playing for more than just Toronto right now. Like Eric is saying, there are a lot of other teams watching him. So whether Toronto decides to protect the asset, because there's no way he's clearing waivers. That's the bottom line. And Toronto has to know that at this point.
Yep.
And that's where I don't think he makes his way to Colorado, is I think that we'll see too. There's a few D that Pittsburgh put on the waiver wire, and we'll see if those really get snatched up or not.
Yep.
People could be waiting to see what Toronto decides to do with Connor Timmins, but that's sort of where I'm at with it. Is one, I think Toronto will be incentivized to try and protect him and maybe make a tougher decision on a more veteran D player that they have to pass through waivers. But at the end of the day, I think Timmins is pretty solid in terms of getting an NHL opportunity
he'll be
somewhere.
In the NHL. And that's same question as the goaltenders then. What's the price? If the Avs really want Timmins, how much would they be willing to give? A fifth, a fourth, a sixth, a random insert prospect here?
I wouldn't even entertain it. I wouldn't recommend that route
not
for
even go?
Colorado.
Okay.
No, I love Connor Timmins,
No,
but I don't know that
totally
giving
fair.
up assets to get
For
a player that they
6D at best,
right, that they moved on from. Again, there was a means to an end. I understand why they had to do it. I don't know if it'd be advice just because they are still taking a gamble on an injury history track record that's a bit unsteady, at least, and they can't afford to be taking that risk right now.
And I'll add to it. Like I said when the Avs decided to move on from Connor Timmins, there's a reason you're moving on from a guy. I understand somebody says it's about Kemper. No, I understand I understand they went and got Kemper. That's not what I'm saying. But you got to remember, when you make a trade, you don't say, I'm trading Rudo for Megan. It's not how it works. So the Avs
I'd trade me for Megan.
You know what I mean? Like, but you got to remember, a lot of times they're not saying, we want Kemper. Okay. The Avs are dead set on, and ended up being what? A first?
Yeah, first Timmins.
Which is a 32nd overall pick.
Yeah,
so
essentially
it's
a first.
But you got to remember, the Avs might have said, again, we're speculating. I just want people to understand, like, they might have said the Avs, we're giving you Timmins, and they're saying, no, we want a second round pick. And the Avs are saying, no, I'm not giving you a second round pick. And again, we're giving you Connor Timmins or player B or player C. And that's how it works. And you get the pick of the litter. Many times they give you choices but what I'm trying to say is the Avs did put Timmins out there in that choice. There's a reason. Okay, we're willing to move past them. And that's what I'm trying to say.
Just to play devil's advocate a little bit,
Sure.
They were in a bit of a bidding war with Edmonton for Kemper, so they probably had to give up a little bit more than they wanted to. But
we'll never know. That's
It's
what I'm
not
saying.
We'll never know
That's
who
what
else
I'm
was
trying to
there,
say.
right?
We
Like, we don't know that they didn't say,
That's what I'm trying to say.
we won't
Yeah.
give Sean
Right.
Barons.
Right.
We won't
There you
give
go.
Drew
Exactly.
Hellison.
And I'm not giving you my second.
Exactly.
Because you got to remember, picks are valuable more than players. They
Yeah.
are. They are.
I mean, depends on the player, but yeah.
Well, no, but I'm saying, but Connor, it was a
Well,
injury prone guy, and he's,
and you're looking at value there, and that wasn't
That's it.
Alex Newhook in that deal, which
that's it. Yeah,
they would not
of
have deal.
course. What I'm saying is easier after to say, but you got to remember at that time, it's not made public
Right.
what the trade is.
Yeah, for sure.
That's all I'm trying to say. I knew it was Kemper. It's not what I was saying. I was saying is, it's you decided you're putting that name down, and it's
Right.
not that easy to do because
It's a business.
It's
Yeah.
a business, and sometimes you're hard set on. No, I'm not putting player X, whether it was Barons or-
Untouchables, yeah.
That's it. But they moved on because there's a reason why you move on to, because it's always like, well, because of this, and that. That's it.
Arizona included,
Totally.
in making a tough decision, but ultimately deciding to part ways.
Yep.
I can tell you guys names that were put back then on big trades, and it's like, woof, thank God they picked that one. Because it's like, but you got to make it available sometimes. It's not just like that player. And then they talk to their staff, and then they go. And then sometimes it works for you. And then sometimes it's like, oh, God, we dodged a bullet there. And you did.
Hey,
But it's easier said 4 years later.
There's a world where Robin Regehr ends up being Alex Tanguay, right?
What's
with
that?
those-
Woof, you read my mind there.
They had. Well, I mean, they had. Who were the other two first-round picks that year?
It was Scott Parker, Robin Regehr,
Tanguay, and
Tangs,
then,
and Martin Skula.
There you go. So
4 that first.
I'm,
First 15.
I'm sure they said,
Or
"Hey,
whatever.
which of these first do you want in that
That's
deal?"
what-
Right.
yeah.
So that's how it works sometimes.
It does.
Do the Avs need to up the ante and give Ivan an NHL contract
Just to move him.
just to move him? No, that's where I was going with this.
But I did want to get to the forwards, and I think, at least for me, unless obviously if someone way over talented comes on the waiver wire, you do what you do, but it doesn't really seem like there should be any room for the Avs to be targeting forwards on the waiver wire this season. Not just because, hey, you have Ben Myers, you have Olofsson, you have guys down the lineup, whether that's a Poland or if you want to give Ivan a deal or name your guy that you like.
Name guy that you like.
Yeah. Would they even consider forwards, or do you think hard out on it?
I would say hard out on it.
Okay. Fair enough.
Probably.
Yeah.
But you just said, like if a name compelling enough
Yeah.
did land on the waiver wire.
If a 30-point guy comes
Right.
on the waiver wire, it's like,
I'm not even thinking about some of these people
Yeah, right.
being available. So I guess that's a fair point. Like if there was a center option
Yeah, 4C could entice them.
with what we're seeing shake out with Ben Myers and Hefty, I could see the Avs being tempted by it for someone who's NHL ready right now that Jared Bednar would trust there. But I mean, I'm personally pretty happy with the forwards.
Okay, Darren Helm, unretire.
Unretired.
And you got to
Darren
remember,
Helm.
too, and I know we're talking about it, but, there'll be a lot of guys that go through waivers this week, next week.
Oh, yeah.
And you will
That's
see
what
them.
we're talking about.
That's what I'm saying. And that you will see traded, exact point that you're talking about, that you will see traded, I don't know, 4 weeks from now. And then I always hear that sometimes it's like, whoa, you could have claimed them for free. No, I know you could have. You like them, but it doesn't work for you at that time because your number of contracts, because of whatever it is. And then you're like, okay, now he's cleared. Now he's in the minors. I'll give you Rudo and I'll take Megan because you're both cleared, right? Does that
Yep.
make sense? So
Yeah.
it's like,
It's
I
way
mean, I
more
think it's
roster
important.
flexibility.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is. It's very important. And that's what,
Honestly, the position you see that happen most in is goaltender, where
Yes,
they can
yes.
have a goaltender down in the minors and they have that 30-day flexibility of the waivers when that happens.
And that's
So-
why if I'm Toronto, I put Connor Timmins down now if that's their plan. Maybe,
Sure.
Again, we're speculating.
Right.
Maybe he's in their top 6 in their mind because they're doing something else with somebody else.
Right.
We don't know that. They're not going to tell us. But if you want to put someone through, earlier the better.
Do it quick. Yeah. All right.
Not just Connor. Anyone.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Look, I know it's technically not a waiver claim, but Frederick Olofsson, essentially a waiver claim for Colorado this offseason.
Who, if they have to make a tough decision, his preseason has been good so far. If it continues to be good, other teams are watching
Yeah.
Frederick Olofsson. That's why I do kind of consider him an asset that I want them to make smart decisions around, where
Sure.
Ben Myers then becomes a little expendable because they can bring him back up from Loveland more easily.
Yeah.
I don't doubt that other teams are watching Frederick Olofsson closely as well.
All right. If Joe Sakic gets something for Frederick Olofsson in a trade, is he actually a genie?
He's a genius. Yeah, I think people need to just not answer Sakic's call. Well, Chris
it's McFarland's
McFarland's
phone.
calls.
Yes.
My apologies.
When McFarland needs to get it over the edge, he calls up Joe and says, "Joe, go sign this.
Can you
go
call from a
sign
different number?" Yeah.
Exactly. You go on the line and say, "I'm Joe Sakic," and they get the deal done. All right.
It's you're talking about that like Kiviranta. Same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I don't know what the Avs are thinking. I mean, obviously, you think something of him if he's here, right?
Right.
There's a reason why he's here. But if I'm Kiviranta, like, I'm playing for 32 teams. I'm not playing for the Avs
Specifically,
I'm not playing for the Avs. I'm playing for a spot in the NHL. And every night that I get to put a jersey on, if it ends up being the Avs, awesome for me. But there's people watching.
You look at the skill set of someone like Kiviranta, and I'm sure he's being honest with himself. He's probably saying, "Hey, my skill set, maybe someone like Chicago takes a look at me.
Sure.
Maybe someone like Anaheim takes a look at me."
Sure.
His skill set doesn't make a ton of sense in a bottom 6 of a cup contending team. It's just the reality of what he does well on the ice.
But there's teams in the NHL that they look, I don't know, Chicago. Okay, great. A team that's not near the playoffs last year, obviously, right? So now they're saying, look at a couple young guys, and they're like, maybe it's not the right thing for us to keep him. Let's put him in Rockford, or let's put this guy back in juniors, and then we'll take Kiviranta
exactly.
to come play 60. And if he does well,
they
come
makes a
trade
career
deadline,
out of it.
or you keep him, or come trade deadline, you get a third or fourth, whatever it is, right? I've seen
Vlad Nemesnikov has made a
way
career out
stranger.
of being that guy.
That's it. Who was that?
Vlad Nemesnikov.
100%.
Yep.
That's my point.
Yep.
So you never know 5-6 months from now what's going to happen. But, that's why you have training camp. That's why you have PTOs. That's why you have things, guys are lost in the shuffle a little bit. And then you have to bring yourself back up right where you think you belong and where somebody thinks you can help them.
There you go. Any final notes on the waiver wire? No. There's always one guy that unexpected ends up there, and the Avs won't get him because again they're too deep on the wire. But some team will be very happy with someone they end up with.
For sure.
The Avs have done a good job of it for a long time. But anyway, we are brought to you by Breckenridge Brewery, the official beer of DNVR. I'm sure the waiver wire makes NHL GMs want to drink. So go get yourself a Breck Brew if you're having some of those conversations. You can get the Broncos Country if you like sadness, or you can get the Avalanche Amber if you like joy and happy things. Take your pick on that. They have dozens of flavors, 8 different kinds here at the DNVR bar. So come down and check them out. Here, get your Breck Brew today. You can find it at your local liquor store with the Breck Beer Locator online at breckbrew.com. And if beer is not your thing, maybe Breckenridge Distillery is your thing. You can go get yourself some incredible whiskey, award-winning stuff for like a dozen years running at this point. They also have a new Broncos vodka to match their whiteout uniforms. I would like to white out every time I walk into Broncos game. It's very good alcohol, though, genuinely. They have a lot of awards won. You can also get yourself in on a competition to win sweet tickets to a Broncos game for the New Year's Eve game against the Chargers. Jump in on this. Hashtag Broncos Bourbon on Instagram with your favorite picture of Broncos players to get entered into the competition. They will narrow it down on December 1st to their favorite picks. And once they do that, they will have a fan vote to get the winners and decide who gets the tickets to the Breckenridge Bourbon Whiskey Suite for that New Year's Eve game, which is a great way to spend New Year's Eve. Once you get down to the vote, make sure you go to BreckenridgeDistillery.com/Bourbon of Denver Broncos to get your votes in and pick a winner. Check them out. They really do make great stuff. It's more than just hard liquor, too. They have seltzers. They have other options. They'll be at our tailgates if you want to give them a test. So go try it. BreckenridgeDistillery.com. Available in all 50 states. You can shop your local retailer, or you can order online where that is allowed. That is it for today's show, I guess. We're going to get out of here. We will be back live tomorrow, given that we can't watch the game. I'm sure we'll talk about what we hear from it, but take it with a grain of salt, whatever comes out of this game, because we're not actually going to be able to see it. And I don't know if they'll come tomorrow, but I would expect a pretty big round of cuts coming from Colorado fairly soon, whether that's Saturday, maybe after Sunday's game. I don't know, but it's coming. And that's when I think the conversations really start. The next round of cuts, you're going to see there'll be still people battling for spots, but it's going to get serious at that point. So
you get down to business. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
As a coaching staff, all right, let's get our real combos going. Let's get everything going. And, no offense to everybody else, but coaches want to get down to their numbers as quick as possible. Yeah. Or management sometimes a little more like, hey, well, let's wait. We want to see this guy longer, So.
Anyway, I am going to get us out of here. We appreciate all of y'all for hanging out with us today. We will be back tomorrow. We are off Saturday. We will have a post game for you on Sunday's game. So keep it tuned in to DNVR. Like and subscribe. That really helps us out a ton here on YouTube. If YouTube is not your thing, if you like listening in the car, things like that, we're also a podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, all of those locations. So give us a listen there. We appreciate you, and we will see you on the next one.